part of what's going on there is that when you have a really high, there's going to be a correlating low afterwards, and vice versa. When there's pain, then it often is going to be followed by some sort of high and a pleasure. And just reflecting on that biblically was like, no, that's interesting, because we see like that in scripture, this pattern of suffering followed by glory. Like there's something to that for sure. That if we can endure suffering, there is a great reward at the end of it for us.
Hit 'em with a little bit of dopamine to keep 'em looking every second. They'll be second guessing, trying to meet the expectation of the age of information. The simulation will be so convincing they'll forget that they're alive.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. I'm here with Joe Deegan and Linda Oliver. Joe, Linda, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good.
So those who've listened to the RYM podcast for a while should be familiar with Joe Deegan, as well as Linda. They've both been on. Do y'all want to give just quick introductions, just in case we've got some new listeners unaware who you guys are? Linda, do you want to start?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I've been around kind of RYM circles for a while, did youth ministry for 13 years, and now I serve on RYM's board, and I also do some part-time work helping out with resources and whatnot. So yeah, you see me around lots of kind of podcasts and written resources that we do in RYM.
And I just realized as I said that, you've been on this season of the podcast. So
I helped one of the interviews.
Yeah. But you've done some behind the scenes stuff that people might not be aware of that we'll talk about more in just a minute.
Sure.
Joe, you've had a hand in every single episode of this season. But yeah, why don't you just kind of update our listeners your role with RYM, and then we'll get into some of those behind the scenes too.
Yeah, I did youth ministry for 7 years, live in Houston, and have been on staff with RYM since 2018 and do the music and lead the worship and the conferences there. But I also get to edit the podcast, which is actually a really fun creative outlet for me. I actually really enjoy getting into the sort of behind the scenes tech side of it and getting to put everything together and try to get it polished up and ready for release.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I'm trying to think exactly how to say this, but maybe just say like, this season wouldn't exist without Joe Deegan. Just so much stuff behind the scenes to make this sound good. I mean, there was one time I went back to listen to something and I think I had like forgotten to turn my mic on or something, and Joe made it sound good. So just from that, YouTube, and also want to give a shout out to Virginia Stroud, who's helping out with a lot of that as well. But yeah, Joe's done a ton of work behind the scenes to help bring this to life. And so I thought, just for our listeners, we're going to give just some behind the scenes of this season of the podcast, but then also kind of draw everything to the close. As I should have said from the outset, this is kind of the final episode of this season of Dopamine Dilemma. Dopamine Dilemma? Dopamine Delusion?
Delusion.
What do I know? I'm just the host of this, right? And I can almost guarantee you I'll get it wrong again. So we'll get into kind of some of our takeaways, some of the highlights, as well as maybe some action items. But I thought, too, a good place to start as we get to some of the behind the scenes. I have heard positive feedback about this season. I've heard a lot of encouraging things, but I think maybe the most consistent thing is the song for this season of the podcast.
Yeah.
And so I thought it'd be awesome just to talk a little bit about the Arcadian Wild. I mean, Joe, you know them personally, right? You've worked with them, but
A little bit. Yeah.
you know about this song and you brought it to our attention, and immediately we're like, man, this sounds great. So just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, first off, I appreciate you saying this season wouldn't have happened without me, but truth be told, I'm not sure it would have happened without AI. There's a big helpful AI component on the back end of this editing. No, but for the song, I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with some Nashville artists. And a lot of this goes back to, I'll give a shout out to Quinn Redmond, who's produced a lot of our RYM worship music. And anytime I get connected with an artist in Nashville, it's through him. It's not because of me or any contacts that I have. But we have been able to have Arcadian Wild play on a few of our songs. And so I've been familiar with their music for a while. And when I heard that we were doing this season on Dopamine, that they have a song called Dopamine that's actually probably one of their best ones, and I just thought, man, that would be cool if that was like the theme song of this podcast. And I brought it up to you, and you're like, okay, how do we make this happen? So then we had to go through a lot of the behind the scenes to make sure the copyright thing worked out. And we got in touch with their manager and got everything lined up and all the paperwork done. So that's been really fun to have that be a part of the story of the podcast this season.
Yeah, that was really cool how that came about, and just their willingness to allow us to use this song, and how just enthusiastic they were about us using it.
Mm-hmm.
And just want to tell our listeners, please go check out their music, the Arcadian Wild. I mean, specifically, listening to the song Dopamine, I mean, the lyrics, the way that it goes so quickly, all that he's saying, and some of it's just like you kind of have to slow it down and listen. Like he is, he's hitting on a lot of things that I mean, we've discussed this season of the podcast, but just some, I don't know, some things that you should reflect on. So, Linda, something I wanted to get our listeners to to know about, because I can't remember if I said this or not, that we do have a Substack.
Mm-hmm.
So RYM launched a Substack this year. Virginia really helped out kind of getting that started. Linda, you've played a huge part in that. And so why don't you just talk a little bit about kind of some of that behind the scenes of helping create Substack Substack posts for every episode that we've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll add this context because I've been surprised every now and then I end up in a conversation where I mention Substack and someone goes, "What is that?" So it basically is sort of a blog version of maybe a social media. I don't really love
they say newsletter. That's the technical, but it's like it just seems like a blog. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you'll have a feed, but you also subscribe to specific blogs and get their posts in newsletter form. So the RYM Substack is something you can subscribe to and get our posts. And so with every episode of this season, we have started writing just kind of a companion piece that goes with it and tells you a little about what's going to go on in the episode. And then we've been trying to post some resources that would help you maybe get a little bit more out of the episode and have some discussion around it.
Yeah. So if you're on Substack, go to Reformed Youth Ministries and, give RYM a follow and just keep up. We're going to try to continue to do that with podcasts, have content that go along with that, as well as just other content. So be sure to check that out. If you're not on Substack, kind of as Linda was saying, what's a Substack? Some people have asked that. Just Google it and you'll find Substack and go check it out. But Linda's put a lot of work into that as well. And it is helpful. Like you said, there's not only content that goes with each episode, but there've been discussion questions. Some of that we're going to ensure is out there and easily accessible, but some discussion questions that can go along with each episode. Okay, so just talking more behind the scenes about the podcast. Joe, maybe give us like behind the scenes tour. Okay, like we sit down with a guest. We record it, we talk, and then we kind of notify you it's there, and we use Riverside if anybody's curious. Mm-hmm. You get the raw footage. What goes on from there?
Yeah, Riverside's really good software. It's not a paid advertisement, right?
I know, they're not a sponsor, but we would.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of things are set up and just ready to be automated. But basically, I go in and create an edit, and it's got a timeline of everybody's audio. And when one person speaks, like I'm speaking right now, that audio will appear and then it'll switch to the next person. And so you can adjust audio levels with each person. You can adjust the screen layouts of, you want all three people on, you just want one person talking. So you can go through and do all those things. But I go through and kind of set up the timeline. But then another thing I'll do, I think this was your idea, John, was to have like a little cold open at the beginning of each episode. So I'll just go through. Oh, here's the other cool thing. Riverside creates text of the entire conversation. So I can scroll through the text to go to certain places in the podcast. So I can kind of read it more quickly than I can actually listen to it. So I'll just kind of scroll through and find a paragraph that looks interesting. And then I'll copy that and create like a duplicated video and put that at the beginning. And that's like the cold open. And then you just go through, you get to the very end. We have like the little outro saved, and I'll plop that at the very end of it and then just kind of try to polish it up as best I can.
Yeah. And it's like, as you're saying that, I did have the thought of the trailer for this podcast. Do you remember what you had to do with the trailer? Do you want to, if you don't, I can say it with me.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Tell us. Cause honestly, I forgot.
Okay. So anyone, and look, this is a reminder too. We've got a YouTube channel now. So all of these, you don't just have to listen to these. If you want to watch these, you can watch them on YouTube. And I want to remind people to check that out. But the first time I was using Riverside, I saw that they had this teleprompter feature. And so I was just going to put my script in the teleprompter and just read it just to try for the, first time. And so I'm reading the teleprompter, which is just kind of over the screen. And then once I finish, I realize, I'm looking at the screen instead of looking at the camera. And so I don't make eye contact with the camera at all. And so I thought I was going to have to re-record it, but Joe just used AI where it does eye contact. And so if you go back and watch the trailer, AI. If you go back and watch the trailer, I have uncanny eye contact. It's not my
You don't
eyes.
blink, you don't break.
It's kind of freaky, but anyway, I just thought that was kind of a fun little behind the scenes thing that Joe figured out. Linda, you have any behind the scenes questions for Joe?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think I've like seen some of the things that he's talking about because I've logged into the Riverside to get the transcripts to help write the
Oh yeah, because it has like the transcript of the entire thing there. So I mean and it's super helpful to just be able to go find the text to the whole conversation, which is really neat.
When I can ask this last behind the scenes, maybe as a segue into talking about the highlights of dopamine of the podcast. Joe, you talked about just enjoying this kind of as a creative process. Maybe phrase it this way: what spikes your dopamine the most in the editing process?
Well, what's funny? I don't know if this is not really an answer to your question. It's more of an admission. I've listened to all the podcasts, but I'm going to admit that I haven't gone back and listened to them after I've edited. Like I listen as I'm editing. Yeah. Which means that I'm listening more for delivery instead of content. But I think this is a testament to how good I think this season was. There were so many moments that even as I'm just like working away and just listening for the delivery, like things would hit me and I would be like, oh, wow, that's really good. And so like just to show that the content was so good that it kind of outshined everything I thought. And I will say the one episode I went back and listened to was Anna Lembke's, because that was, it's kind of hard not to go back and listen to the expert on dopamine. But, so, I mean, honestly, like the thing I enjoy most is the feeling that I get to kind of help tell the story, like the content's out there, but I get to kind of help make it flow from beginning to end. That's just really fun for me. Yeah.
Well, let's jump into maybe some of the highlights, and too, if you've been listening or watching this season, there's so much to try to, it's like as I'm thinking of highlights, there's just every one of them. There's something about them I want to talk about, but hopefully kind of jog people's memories as we talk through some of this. But I do just from the outset want to give a shout out to Thomas Fitch again, as we said from the beginning in the, I guess, introductory episode. It was his idea. I think it was November when he sent an email just saying, "Hey, I'd like to maybe talk about this a little bit more and think it'd be a good podcast season." And so just thanking Thomas. But yeah, as we talk about some of those highlights, Linda, would you want to start us off, putting you on the spot a little bit? Any kind of highlights from this that stick out to you?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, before we even started interviewing some of these people, and before I was preparing to help interview Anna Lembke, I did a bunch of reading on dopamine myself. And it's interesting when you get into all of that literature that some of it goes into all these things where it's like, okay, so therefore here's how to like work with your dopamine, or, like hack it to your like benefit rather than letting like the world hack it or whatever. And so it can feel like the answer is kind of all of that stuff. Like, so how do I use dopamine to my benefit? And I really appreciated that the episodes with Paul Loosemore and Jay Stringer really encouraged us to kind of look at the wider story and say, okay, yes, dopamine is part of the picture. And also, why are we reaching for those substances and behaviors in the first place? Outside of dopamine, like what's the story about? What are we trying to soothe, or whatever it is? Why are we turning to these things? And to put that kind of within the biblical story and understand those are things that we can, bring before the Lord. I think that was a real highlight for me.
Yeah. And I'll piggyback on that because that's one of the first ones I wrote down was Paul Loosemore, and just, maybe specifically just the biblical anthropology that he talked about, that, there's so much complexity as we start to talk about dopamine and as we start to talk about just the human brain. But really, him and as well as Anna and others, like dopamine isn't this bad thing. It's this, as God designed us after his image, these complex beings, we've got these chemicals in our body that he created, and it's a survival thing as well, and so just kind of starting there as a foundation, I think was just really helpful, the way that he talked about that. And so, yeah, kind of piggybacking on some of what you're saying, but also just that aspect specifically was really, helpful for me.
Hey there, this is Brent Corbin, Executive Director for RYM. Thank you so much for joining us on this season of the RYM podcast as we explore the effects of the God-given gift of dopamine on all of our lives in this technological age. Our podcast is just part of our array of resources which we provide to the church and parents in the church and anyone seeking to invest in the lives of young people. So head over to rym.org/resources to see what we have for you there. And our resources are themselves just a part of our array of offerings for the church. We also offer summer youth conferences. This summer we will have 9 conferences from coast to coast where churches can bring their youth students and youth groups, and they can learn alongside one another with over 15 hours of biblical instruction, interaction, as well as some serious fun along the way. We even have some openings this summer, so head over to rym.org/conferences to learn more about those. And if you or someone you know is looking to develop in your skills and understanding of how to think critically and effectively about how to minister to and care for youth, then you'll want to check out our RYM training initiatives to see if there's something there for you. So whether you're brand new in youth ministry or you've been in the game a long time as a minister or as a parent or a volunteer, we suspect there will be many ways for you to benefit from our decades of combined wisdom and experience in this space. So head over to rym.org/training to learn more there. As you've heard, our website is full of information that we hope is useful for you and for your church. So head over to rym.org, and if you'll scroll down to the bottom of that homepage and sign up for one of our newsletters that's applicable to you, you'll stay up to date on the latest of all that we have to offer. Now back to the show.
I would agree with what you just said, that one of the things that stood out to me, and kind of showing my ignorance of this whole topic,
Me too.
was that, just kind of laying the foundation that dopamine is a God-given gift. It's a good thing. And I think, I've always heard people talk about get your dopamine hit or like a dopamine rush or whatever. And you can kind of start to think of it in a negative connotation. And so it was actually really helpful to hear pretty much everybody just kind of lay this foundation. Like, this is something that we need. This is something God gave us. And I'm going back to Anna Lembke. I think one thing that stood out to me was her seesaw illustration of how we go after pleasure and we kind of go down on that end. And then as we're coming off of it, like the body wants to balance. And so the gremlins jump on the other side of and that's where we feel the pain of coming off of that. And I guess just thinking about the need for moderation with everything. I think that was kind of what I took away from that illustration, that maybe our instinct is to go, oh no, I don't want to feel that pain. And so we immediately try to keep chasing the pleasure side and keep trying to push that down, and more gremlins keep piling on. And so then we just get like out of whack. And that if you can actually resist that little bit of pain, then that's kind of where you can find a little bit of that temperance and that balance, I guess. That was what I took out of that illustration. I don't know. You feel like I'm getting that right or interpreting what she said right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, there was part of me, it's like, I didn't want to just say Anna Lembke because, that's kind of the obvious one from this season. But it's like, I just went out, I'm like, yeah, I'm writing her down. Like, that was such a highlight to have her on this season. And, it really, I meant it when she was on. I mean, she's one of the world's leading experts on this topic. And it was just insane to me that she was willing to come on our podcast. And that says a whole lot about her, excuse me. Like she was just, so gracious, so kind. I mean, you were on that episode, Linda, and even you talking about the gremlins, Joe, like just her ability to use an illustration like gremlins and a seesaw to kind of help us grasp something very complex about the human mind, just shows. I mean, as we said on the episode she was on, but saying now, I mean, she just has to be a great professor in the classroom. And so, really appreciated her. And just, if for some reason people are just now tuning in and missed that, definitely go back and check that one out because, that's one I listened to more than once because, even as the host, sometimes you're trying to anticipate the next question. And even in that, you're not getting to fully kind of hear everything that's being said. And it's like, I just wanted to go back and hear all that she was saying, and just encouraging people too to check out her book. If you do want one book to kind of understand dopamine a little bit more, I would recommend that, with a caveat that there's an opening illustration that's very graphic, and so just letting people know that. And there's some content in there that might be kind of rough, but it's also very readable, very interesting. Linda, you want to say any more about Anna?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about that whole pleasure pain kind of seesaw balance thing that she talks about. And as I remember looking at that in the book a little bit too, I don't remember how much she got into this in the episode, but part of what's going on there is that, like, when you have a really high, there's going to be a correlating low afterwards, and vice versa. When there's pain, then it often is going to be followed by some sort of high and a pleasure. And just reflecting on that, like biblically, it was like, no, that's interesting, because we see like that in scripture, this pattern of suffering followed by glory. Like there's something to that for sure. That if we can endure suffering, there is a great reward at the end of it for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other one that just kind of, I mean, I want to mention Walt Mueller's, just all of his on consumerism. It's like, goodness gracious, just thinking of how easily we can hit a button and we get Amazon. I mean, it's just all of just that marketing and everything was so rich. But, and I don't know if it's because this is the most recent one, but Daniel Darling and Kurt Cooper talking about sports betting. That to me, I just want to continue to trumpet because it does seem like it's not being talked about enough. And I can't remember if it was Daniel who said it first on the episode or Kurt, but really that we need to see the sports betting industry as a predatory organization. And I think that language, when he said that just really resonated with me of, wow, yeah, this is not something that's designed to just foster fun from the sport. It's not about trying to help people win. It's, trying to just profit its creators, and it's designed to ultimately harm people. And I don't know, there's just, and you just that alone, kind of that aspect about it. But then you factor in the dopamine aspect to this, as well as sports betting is already addictive, and you've got it on a smartphone now. It's just a very dangerous thing. And so that's something that also stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something that I was going to bring up is, just that concept that they're designed to exploit and addict. I think sports betting apps are not something I'm very familiar with or think about a lot,
Me
right?
either.
It's not really something I have to think about a lot. But I did come across an article just the other day that was saying it's not the sports betting apps, but the prediction markets, which work in very similar ways, that at least a couple of them are also now purposely targeting young women because they realize like this is a demographic that's like, 50% of young people that we have not yet reached. And they also want to get them hooked onto, betting in the prediction markets. So yeah, like very much like predatory.
Wow. And that's interesting to hear, because we specifically talked about how, it's so targeted to men on that episode. And so, yeah, I mean, makes complete sense that that they're trying to change their tactics a little bit. But yeah, that's all the more sobering. Anything else that stood out to any of you before we move on to just something else?
One of the things, again, that Anna Lembke said, that I feel like I've been carrying with me since I heard the episode, that boredom is the midwife of creativity. I thought that was such a good quote. And, as someone who, like, I write songs and I work in a creative field, like, why am I so resistant to boredom? Why am I constantly trying to, like, push boredom aside if that's like actually something that could help me be more creative? And so I'm trying to think through more of what that looks like in my own life and my kids' lives, of encouraging them to be bored, and seeing what that looks like when they play together and go outside. So I don't know. That's something that's just been sitting with me for a while, and trying to figure out more of what that might actually look like in my life, to just let myself be bored more often.
Yeah, that's good. And that's a good segue of just kind of maybe other areas of, how this season might have impacted us. Ways in which, as we've played a part in every one of these episodes, all of us in some way. And so dopamine's been on my mind a lot more. And, at times when I'm just looking at my phone, it's like, you're part of the problem, John. Get a hold of yourself. And so I've just been, more aware of it. And I guess just one thing for me that I've done is I got a blocker for YouTube on my phone. It's called Screen Zen. Just because I was realizing, how much I was just looking at YouTube, and how much I could not stop watching, certain videos, and the algorithm was too powerful for me, and I didn't have enough discipline. And so, it's just a helpful blocker where, you can adjust it in so many different ways, but this one, it takes 30 seconds to open when you press the app. And it also asks you a question. Why you can change the question, and I just put, why am I checking it? You get to watch it for 10 minutes at a time, and you can do it, 6 times a day, or however much you want. So anyway, that's just kind of made me more aware of just one of the apps on my phone. That's one of those that just draws me in. And
I guess that explains all the videos you've been sending me lately.
That's my time.
John and I've had an exchange of just funny videos recently.
That's right.
Anytime something funny pops up, we send it each other's way.
Yeah, it's kind of like Joe, Michael, and I have this similar sense of humor, and so it's like I'll watch a video, I'm like, this is definitely Joe and Michael.
So Don't block it too much. I like those
Yeah,
videos.
that's right. That's some good things. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about with the two of you? I mean, Joe, you talked about boredom just a second ago, but other things that have resonated with you guys from this episode, I mean, from this season?
I find it just really helpful sometimes to have like a lot of these things named for us, right? Because it's I think empowering in some ways. I don't know, it can be really easy to kind of be hard on yourself for things that you compulsively do or habits you're trying to give up that you can't give up. And to just know like, oh, it's not like I shouldn't just tell myself like I'm just such an awful person, I have no self-control, but instead go, oh, I should expect that it will feel this way because that's literally the way that God designed dopamine in our brains to work. And the problem is not me and the dopamine in my brain. The problem is that there are a lot of businesses out there that have learned to hack my dopamine to get me to do things that I don't actually want to do. And so for instance, I can't remember like how if we started releasing the episodes prior to Lent or if it was just that I was looking into dopamine prior to Lent, but dopamine was on my mind as we were headed into the season of Lent. And, my church makes a big enough deal about Lent that it was on my mind to give up something for it. And almost everyone in my community group gave up something related to screens or digital stuff, right? I did something similar. And I started noticing in the first, couple of weeks, like, oh, I keep having this like urge to go back to the screen at the time that I usually do. And, oh, that's dopamine. Like I don't have to listen to it telling me like, hey, this is what you want right now. Because even though I want it, I'm not actually going to enjoy it. And this is not actually what I've committed to doing for these weeks. Yeah. So it's just like a way that, I don't know, it was just helpful to be able to name that to myself.
Yeah. I like how you said that sometimes it's just kind of reminding us of these things we already are aware of and just naming it can be important. Yeah. Any other things that jumped out to you, Joe?
Yeah. One of the things that, obviously this always just leads to a discussion of phones and screens and all the digital things. And, my kids are getting a little bit older. We're starting to get to a point where like, at some point they're going to get phones and like, how do we model this for them? And, spoiler, I've done a terrible job of modeling it for them. But my wife and I were talking the other night, and this was actually her idea. I want to give her credit because I think it's a creative idea. And she was talking about how we're children of the 90s. We grew up with like a home phone in our kitchen and that had a cord attached to it. And she said, what if we just had a space in our house that was just like phone station that like every night when she gets home, she's a teacher, she gets home with the kids from work and I'm done with the work, we just put our phones up there. And it doesn't mean we can't use them. We can go answer a call or a text or whatever, but instead of going to the couch with us to sit down and just like scroll, and the idea of turning it back into a tool instead of a toy. And so we haven't done that yet. We're literally going to start that tonight as of this recording. Like we literally just talked about this the other day, and this is like our first night at home where we're going to sit down with the kids and talk about it. And it's going to start with a big apology to the kids and just saying like, hey, I know we have not always modeled this well for you, especially me. But as they're getting older, I want to start trying to build some better habits in our home, so that I'm not just like telling them what I think they should do, so that maybe I've got a little bit of time to hopefully show them something better. So we're going to try that out, and I give all the credit to my wife for that idea, but I think it's pretty creative and I'm excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That is. I know we're going to need to start wrapping this up.
Yeah.
Something that this was actually Chat GPT that helped out with this. So I wanted to give a reference to that. Just kind of a reset as we're talking. And some of this is interesting as we brought some of this up on the just throughout the season. I mean, can't remember who all said this, but there are aspects of this that were mentioned, I think, by most of them. But the simple framework that they give kind of three things: subtract, replace, and rebuild. So the first, subtract, where it says reduce high dopamine inputs like social media, late night scrolling. So you subtract. And then secondly, you also replace it with something. So not just removal, but replace it with like reading or walking or face-to-face conversation. And then lastly, rebuild. Practices that retrain desire. They said scripture, prayer, Sabbath, fasting, just being still. I mean, kind of even your boredom kind of tying into that, Joe, just kind of sitting and being still and being present. And so I thought those were kind of just three things that really kind of helped sum up some of what was mentioned of, subtract, replace, and rebuild. Any reaction to that? Any thoughts to that? Any additions to that you guys would mention?
I think that's really good. Yeah, I'm kind of mulling that over right now. I like that it, I guess kind of going back to that seesaw illustration, if you're going to subtract something, like you're going to feel that a little bit of that void. And so finding something to replace, and then also like rebuild around that and, construct something that's like actually helpful for your life moving forward. I think that's a really helpful advice.
Yeah. Linda, anything to add to any of that?
Yeah, I mean, the piece of something you said in there touched on the idea of like forming our desires. And I think I noticed that as a theme in a number of the episodes that, like desire and dopamine are not the problem, but our desires are often misdirected, and we need to work on forming our desires so that, like, essentially, to put it in dopamine terms, like, we're training our dopamine to release for the right things rather than for the wrong things, which scripture would put in other terms, like, be renewed by the transforming of your mind and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, drawing this to a close, there is so much guilt associated with this. And we're talking about screens, and anytime you do that, everyone feels bad about the ways in which their lack of discipline over their smartphone. And so, to our listeners or people watching as well, like not guilt tripping, not trying to shame, but honestly, just kind of evaluating some of your practices in your own life and seeing ways in which you could potentially just replace some of these, practices that are feeding this in a negative way, and replacing them with healthier things, and also trying to rebuild, as it said. So yeah, just kind of leave on that encouragement. And it's like, as I'm saying that, I also want to just kind of give a plug for some of our next seasons, because one of them's connected to this a little bit. But the next season, which will start in a couple of weeks at the time of this recording, is going to be about a book that RYM is publishing entitled In on the Joke. Matt Howell, who's a pastor in Memphis, wrote that book. It's a theology of humor. It's a hilarious book, but it's also very well written, very well researched. And so we'll have a 3-part series on the book In on the Joke, but also just humor and Christians and humor, and just some of Matt's background as well. And so stay tuned for that in the fall. Most likely, we don't know exactly when, so just we'll keep you posted. But we're going to be talking about the topic of shame. And so as I was kind of drawing this to a close, and I was thinking there's so much shame that's attached to this discussion on dopamine. There's a lot of areas in which we want to explore. So just stay tuned for that. Joe, Linda, thanks for jumping on and being a part of this.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Wake up and break yourself out of here. Don't be one of the cold souls who disappear. Stop believing them telling the lie. Why don't you look your life in the eye?
Thanks for listening to the RYM podcast and this season of the Dopamine Delusion. Special thanks to the Arcadian Wild for the use of their song Dopamine, and to our editors Joe Deegan and Virginia Stroud. Be sure and check out the show notes for links, resources, or books mentioned in today's episode. If today's topic resonated with you, please take the time to share this episode with a friend who might find it beneficial. For more information about our student conferences, youth leader training, and other resources, be sure to visit rym.org. See you next week for another episode of the Dopamine Delusion.